Blind, banished, broken, the imperial chef who once cooked like a god now kneels in a leaking shack by the canal, counting the last of his coins. The palace took his sight, his knives, his purpose, but not his hands. And in the darkness, a question burns. Can a man who's lost everything still create, or will the world force him to starve? The only place left was a shack by the stinking canal, the kind even beggars avoided. The roof leaked in rhythms he learned by heart, and the fire pit outside became his new kitchen. The smoke from the fire was a poor replacement for the scent of finely prepared dishes, but for now it was all he had. The shack stood like a forgotten monument to his fall, perched near the edge of the canal. The water inched slowly by, dark and stagnant, carrying with it the scent of rot and decay. Rats scurried on the banks, their greedy eyes watching him. The very air seemed to stick to his skin, thick and heavy with despair. But he didn't care. His world had shrunk to the confines of the shack. Nothing mattered anymore. The roof above him leaked in rhythms that became a part of his life. The constant drip, drip, drip became a lullaby in the dead of night. His bed was a thin mat, placed beside the fire pit where he now spent most of his time. The once legendary chef, who had commanded the kitchens of the palace, now sat hunched over a flame, cooking food he could barely taste. For months he just sat there, broken. The coins, the minor official from the imperial kitchen bureau, had given him barely lasted a week. He hadn't needed much, just enough to buy some dried fish, vegetables, and rice. In the beginning, he had tried to make something resembling a meal, but the spark that had once ignited his passion for food was gone. It was no longer an art. Now it was only sustenance. He ate to survive, not to create. He bought whatever scraps the market offered and ate them, indifferent to the lack of flavor, the lack of joy in each bite. The days passed in a haze. He woke in the morning to the soft sloshing sound of the canal, the dim gray light creeping through the cracks in the walls. He didn't bother to count the days anymore. Time had lost its meaning. He only measured it by the slow erosion of his spirit, the fading of his will to live. One morning, after another restless night, he ventured out again to buy food. The market was as noisy as ever, shouting vendors, customers haggling, the clinking of coins, but none of it moved him. He stood there like a ghost, unnoticed, just another figure in the crowd. The sight of meat hanging on hooks, fresh vegetables stacked neatly in baskets, barely registered in his mind. He made his way to the dried fish vendor, the one who had come to recognize him by now. The vendor wrapped the salted carp in lotus leaves, a gesture of pity he once showed to beggars, his eyes lingering on the chef. But the chef said nothing in return. He paid with the last of his coins, counting them slowly, making sure he still had enough for the next few days. With his food in hand, he trudged back to the shack, his steps slow and deliberate. The cold wind bit at his skin, and his eyes, still clouded from the explosion, ached in the gray light of the day. He was used to the pain now. It had become a constant companion, one he could no longer escape. At the shack, he sat by the fire pit, tearing into the salted carp. The lotus leaves clung to the salted carp like the silk napkins he'd once used to polish. Imperial porcelain, their earthy scent mixing with coarse salt. The smell of it mingled with the dampness of the shack, a stark contrast to the aromas he had once conjured in the palace kitchens. But none of it mattered now. He chewed mechanically, not tasting the salted carp. His tongue remembered the honey-glazed perch he'd once served the emperor. He simply ate because he had to. The silence around him felt like a weight. The only sound was the crackle of the fire and the drip of water from the roof. He stared into the flames, watching them flicker and dance. He had never been a man of many words, but now, words seemed too far away. There were no more grand speeches in the kitchen, no more orders barked to apprentices, no more laughter shared over a good meal. There was only the fire, the food, and the loneliness. He could feel his hands trembling as he reached for the next piece of fish. His grip was weaker than it used to be. His body, once strong from years of hard labor in the kitchens, had become frail. The chef who had once moved with grace, who had wielded knives like an artist's brush, now fumbled with his food. The world outside the shack felt distant, as though it had forgotten him. He couldn't see it, but he knew it was still there. People going about their lives, unaware of the man who had once been a master of his craft. They didn't know the story of the explosion, the blindness, or the fall from grace. They didn't know how he had lost everything. And so he sat. He sat, and he ate, and he waited. The days blurred into one another. Nothing changed. The ache inside him grew deeper, more insistent. But there was nothing he could do. Then, one day, as he sat by the fire, The sound of footsteps broke through the silence. It was a weak sound, uneven, like someone struggling to walk. The chef's heart quickened, but he didn't move. He listened as the footsteps grew closer, the sound of breathing ragged and labored. Then a cough, a weak, pained cough, echoed from the doorway of the shack. The chef's senses strained. He wasn't sure if it was a beggar or a passerby. Who would come here, to this place of misery?